start by fitting the whistle valve and steam blower to the turret. I've heard the turret be referred to as quote-unquote column and or junction, so excuse the term turret if that differs in preference. This is the blower and or steam blower valve that will activate steam through the smoke box in order to create a draft for the fire when under steam. This right here is the whistle valve, and when under steam, this activates the whistle. The whistle on this locomotive is located underneath the left-hand side running board. And here we'll carefully screw in the whistle valve to the turret. Here's the assembly complete. Now we'll take the turret's components and screw the whole assembly onto the top of the boiler. Steam from the boiler will fill the whistle's valve and blower valve. From here, the engineer can activate the functions of these components by using the steam from the boiler. Here we'll attach the blower's plumbing to the blower valve. And next, we'll attach the whistle's plumbing to the whistle valve. Attaching the pressure gauge. The two safety valves on this locomotive are set to pop off at 90 psi, which means if the pressure in the boiler exceeds 90 pounds per square inch, the safety valves will open and allow steam to exit in order to maintain a safe pressure of 90 psi. This boiler was tested at 200 psi, and the pressure gauge allows the engineer to tell the pressure inside the boiler. Fire grate and ash pan. This locomotive will run on coal for the time being. The coal and timber in the firebox will rest onto the grate. The pan will collect the burnt off excess ashes, etc. Next up, we have the sand dome. The sand dome above the boiler is used to store sand that's dropped on the rails in front of the locomotive's drivers in order to create better traction. Some locomotives carry their sand in boxes, either on the front of the locomotive or near a set of driver wheels. The sand can be either forced through the tubes onto the rails by either steam and or gravity. Some locomotive engineers put scoops of sand inside the firebox on the cab to clear out the flues and or boiler tubes. This helps clear coal buildup in the pipes so the locomotive in return breathes and fires better. This sand dome is purely cosmetic, and very few if any locomotives of this scale use actual sand for traction. I think AccuCraft did a nice job in producing an authentic sand dome with delivery pipes included that lead down to the drivers. The sand dome and the steam dome on this locomotive are very heavy. They did this to give the locomotive a little more weight and create a better tractive effort. The iconic smokestack and/or funnel had some good weight to it and was easily installed. The blast pipe in the smoke box will discharge used steam. This mixes with the smoke created by the fire and gets blasted out through the smoke box and out of the stack. If you pay close attention to locomotives in action, you can visually see the timing of the running gear and/or wheels with the piston strokes to the exhaust release out of the stack. I decided to install a safety chain between the locomotive and tender. In order to do that, I then had to test the locomotive and tender out on the sharpest radius on my layout. From there, I drilled out a hole in the locomotive's transom and a hole in the tender's transom, followed by installing eye hooks. From there, a chain can be put on in case a hitch from the locomotive and tender decide to detach for whatever reason. Water is stored in the tender and is injected into the locomotive's boiler plumbing through a series of rubber tubes. These are vital to keeping a safe water level in the boiler. If one of these tubes decides to detach and/or a hitch fails, it can in return rip the tubes from the locomotive and one would have a runaway with no water source. If that were to happen, these chains will act as a fail-safe and keep the locomotive and tender together, as well as keep the water source connected to the locomotive. Before I roll the traditional final shot, I wanted to share some 240 locomotives I saved the other night while looking at brake compressor placements and/or lack of, including one of my favorites, the Ernest S. Marshall. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, keep steaming.